Hello kids, how are we? Everyone good today? I'm just going to add a little comment in here. Hello Mitchell, you're always one of the first. It's almost like you enjoy these. Hi Fernando. Just going to pin that little comment there so we know what we're talking about today. I was going to say it was a bit grey and drizzly, but it's actually just suddenly become really beautiful out, and I've been relegated to my bedroom again. But the light's actually quite good. I'm all right with it. How is everyone? Danny's already had 5 cups of tea. Do you know what? I'm going to tell her, just break the kind of thing here. I've got my cappuccino mug, my really big one. Oh, hello Lee. You made it finally. Keeping up with everyone else. But this is not actually tea today. This is hot Ribena because I've got a sore throat. So I'm being a little bit delicate with myself today. I'm having a hot Ribena. It is great lighting, isn't it? I'm loving this. I could get used to this. Might have to do a little feed from my bedroom every day. How is everyone? Hi Chloe, nice to see you. Hello Emma, in from New York. How is everybody today? Are we keeping nice and bright? Spirits high, I hope. Oh, Tess has come in from Bristol as well. It's nice to see you all. Thank you all for coming out. It's quite nice to sort of see the same names coming back day after day. It's really lovely. So I'm glad that you're all enjoying it. Now we're back to our Mondays. So we are on Monarch Mondays today. I'm having a think about Monarch Mondays, whether we do them all chronologically or whether we skip the boring ones and go straight to kind of the exciting, interesting ones a bit further along. Happy to take direction from you guys. We've got people from sunny Florida and New Jersey as well today. Exciting. So if you've got any preferences on what you fancy, whether you want to stick with the kind of Plantagenets or whether we just skip forward and we come back to them if the lockdown takes longer than we think. But I might put a little thing on the stories about that later. Right, let's get going. So today we are talking about Harold. We talked last week about Edward the Confessor, so we're going to move on down the line to Harold and William the Conqueror. We're going to smush 2 together today and talk a little bit about... Oh, hi Lynn. Lynn's back as well. Talk a little bit about the Battle of Hastings, because it's a bit of a big deal. There are 3 dates that every good Brit knows. 1066, 1666 and 1966. Now, we did 1666 the other day with the Great Fire of London. This is 1066, and it's up to you to decide what 1966 is. Most of you will know. I might tell at the end if I remember. But we're going to go back. So where we left the story of the monarchs was Edward the Confessor having died and then been dug up again a while later and had this amazing ring and was all that kind of thing. But when Edward the Confessor dies, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. We mentioned it briefly the other day. I'm going to start by talking about the chap who is supposed to take over from him. Is a guy called Harold Godwinson. He is, funnily enough, the son of a guy called Godwin. And what has happened is Godwin is he's very friendly with the king, with Edward the Confessor. He's actually helped him get a couple of kingdoms together. He's been a real loyal guy. And so Edward the Confessor's kind of said, yeah, well, you know, you'll have the throne when I die. So that's all fine. But then what happens is Godwin disobeys him on something. He's told to kind of punish a town that's quite friendly to him, and he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. So the king's like, well, stuff it then, you're not going to get the throne. And they don't really take kindly to this, as you could imagine. And so his son, Harold, who is the guy that we're talking about, decides he's going to invade England and basically get Edward the Confessor to give his dad back the throne as inheritance. And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. So he gives up and he says, yep, fine. You can have the throne. And Godwin then dies. So it's basically going to be Harold. And that is what has been decided. Except Edward the Confessor has kind of muddied the waters a bit. Because when he was younger, he had been in exile in France. And he'd actually known not William the Conqueror at this stage, Duke William of Normandy. And he'd known him. He'd been there for a while and they'd kind of hung out and he'd helped him and all that sort of thing. And so in return, he'd said, well, tell you what, have the throne when I die. And so William is pretty happy with that, as you can imagine. And the problem is, when Edward is still on the throne, he gets Harold in. He actually sends Harold over to William in Normandy to kind of solidify this, confirm this, that he's got the throne. So basically what Edward has done is he's promised the throne to 2 different people. Now, William over in Normandy, he is French, he is Norman, And that's not his name, that is where he comes from. I had a family last year and I was talking about the Normans, and this little boy said, "Why are so many people called Norman?" I was like, "Oh, that's adorable." Anyway, they're not called Norman. And he, he's called Duke William of Normandy, but he's also got another name. He is called William the Bastard. And this is not because he's not very nice. I mean, he's not particularly nice, but it's because he is illegitimate. And a lot of the locals in France call him that. He's not particularly fond of that name, as you could imagine. But that is how he is known. And so when Edward dies, on his deathbed, he is convinced to give the throne to Harold. So William's over there in Normandy going, well, you promised me this throne and you've given it to this other guy. And what's more, you told him to come over and confirm not only that you give me the throne, but he promised me his loyalty. And there is, I'm sure you know, in France, there is a piece of artwork. It's a tapestry. It's called the Bayeux Tapestry. And I'm actually just going to bring you up a little picture here. Because right in the middle, on the right-hand side, you have Harold Godwinson, and on the left you have William of Normandy. And what Harold is doing is he is swearing on the Bible his allegiance to William. So when it comes to it and William takes the throne, I'm actually going to show you a little picture of, this is Harold Godwinson. He's a bit of a dish, isn't he? Nice little moustache going on there. So this is the chap in England, the Saxon guy who is taking this throne. And William the Conqueror goes, well, hang on, you've sworn loyalty to me and I was promised it. So what's happening with that? Now this is William the Conqueror right here. Very regal. I like his hat. So this is the chap who is basically, getting a bit cross about the whole thing. Harold gets himself crowned just the day after William the Conqueror is, sorry, not William Conqueror, after Edward the Confessor dies. Harold, there's no messing, he takes the crown. Edward dies in January, and Harold, literally the next day, says, well, that's it, I'm king. What then happens is William thinks, right, I'm going to have to do this properly. And he starts amassing a whole variety of troops and ships. And he thinks, right, I'm going to go and invade. I'm going to go and take what's mine. But I have to wait for the right time. One of the things was the wind wasn't right. It was going the opposite way, so he couldn't sail across the channel. But come September, Harold is taken up to the north of England, where there's another guy called Harold. This is going to get confusing. Harold Hardrada. And he's coming in from Norway, and he is basically trying to invade. And he pops up there with 300 boats full of soldiers. So Harold, marches his troops up to him, and he meets him at a place called Stamford Bridge. Now, those people who are interested in like a sort of kick sport thing tell me that that's something to do with football too. But for me, it's a battle. So he goes up to Stamford Bridge and he meets Harold Hardrada, and he basically beats 10 bells out of him. The guys who come over from Norway, they come over with 300 boats, and when they leave, there are only enough people to fill 24 boats. And Harold Hardrada himself is actually killed at the battle. So a big success for our Harold Godwinson. Brilliant. But 2 days later, he hears that William the Conqueror has landed in the south of England. Now, the wind has changed. William himself has 600 boats filled with troops and cavalry as well. And he has landed on the coast. So Harold takes all of his troops and marches 200 miles down in 1 week. Gets down to a place called Hastings, and this is where he fights William the Conqueror and his troops. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of a sense of what the battle might have looked like. A little bit like this. It was huge. Now, this is a bit, obviously not of the time. This is a picture rather than a photograph. And so you have this massive phalanx of Saxon troops. Now, the Saxons were very, very strong, but they had marched 200 miles and they were exhausted. They were very good at creating what they called a shield wall. And I'm going to give you, now this, let me tell you, this is hilarious. This is not from the actual time, as you will tell. This is the sort of thing that a shield wall might look like, but a bit bigger and a bit better. And so this is the Saxons, or let's call them the English really. The Saxons are up on top of this massive hill at Hastings. And the French, or the Normans, are below. Now, you have a much bigger version of this shield wall going on along the top. And the French were very, very good archers. But even with that, they're shooting uphill and they can't actually break through this line. Even when they go up the hill and they start hand-to-hand combat, as you can see back in this one here, they still can't get through this huge shield wall. It's really impossible. So the Saxons are doing really well. What then happens is there's a rumour that goes around that William has been killed. And the Norman army starts to freak out a little bit. And they start to retreat a bit. Now, William he's alive. He's not dead at all. He rides through his troops to kind of go, I'm here, you know, look, I've still got my hat, I'm all good. And so they're like, oh, okay, cool. But what they'd seen is that when they'd started to retreat, the Saxons had started to come down from the hill. And they thought, this is our opportunity. So they fake a retreat. They back off. And as they do, the Saxons or the English come down the hill. The French turn around and they can then start picking them off and they can get through that line. Now, my favourite thing about this battle, whether it's true or not, I don't know, but I read it and I love it. William the Conqueror went onto the battlefield with his jester, who's basically like a fool, a kind of circus act, who would sort of sing all kinds of merry ditties to keep everyone going, but would also make fun of the English soldiers. And apparently he was the first person to be killed at the battle. I just love the idea that he's there kind of going, a bit sort of Monty Python style. And the Brits are like, no, I'm not having that. And they just take him out. So there we go. He is apparently the first death on the battlefield. Now, when the Normans start to break through the lines, one of the big casualties is Harold himself. Now, here he is on the left in the Bayeux Tapestry again. And what you can see is him holding something up to his face. What they think is actually that happened is that he was shot in the eye. Now, we don't know if this is true or not. This is the Bayeux Tapestry. It's the best part of 1,000 years old. We don't have any eyewitness accounts that are particular, we don't have any photos or anything like that. So it's thought that maybe he wasn't shot in the eye and killed. There is a story that possibly he was killed when he was fighting 4 soldiers at the same time, which frankly I think is better. I mean, go down fighting. But whichever way, he was killed at the battle, and it was said that his face was so badly hacked apart that the next day, the only person who could identify him was his mother, from some sort of mark or birthmark on his body that she knew. So whichever way you slice it, Harold is killed. What William then does, I'm going to bring back that picture of good old Wills up here. William decides he's going to ride up to London. And he's going to take England and he is going to take the throne. So he starts riding through England. Now, funnily enough, the English that have just been conquered are not particularly happy with this. And they put up a bit of a fight. And he goes through with what we call a scorched earth policy, where basically he just burns everything, takes what he needs, kills anybody who kind of goes up against him. So he's not making many friends. And when he gets to London, he has his coronation in Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day in 1066. Now, this is the first time that a coronation takes place on the site of where Westminster Abbey is now, in the old building. And when the coronation takes place, he is a bit worried because he's, not had a great relationship with everyone he's been sort of chopping down en route. So when it's happening, he stations some guards out the front of the Abbey. Now, at one point in the ceremony, there's this bit where everybody sort of cheers and shouts out "Vivat," which is basically "Long live the King." And the guards at the front aren't sure what's happening and they think there's a revolt happening. So they start burning stuff and killing people outside, which causes pandemonium and chaos. And the people in the church start running out and everyone's panicked and confused. And the only people left in there are the clergy, the monks, and William, who's being crowned. And apparently he was pale and trembling and absolutely terrified. So his coronation didn't go very well either. And he then thought, right, well, I'm crowned now, I'm a king, so I'll pop back to France, go back to my holiday home. And that's what he did, but it didn't go very well because, of course, funnily enough, again, the English weren't too happy about it and they rose up, particularly in the north, with the help of the Vikings who came over. So William had to come back to England and he did a thing in the north called the Harrying of the North, where he basically burned down villages, slaughtered people and livestock, and essentially said, I'm the boss, do what I say. He built a variety of castles around the UK to sort of strengthen his hold, really. There's a whole ring of them that go on around London. And we still have some of them to this day. Most are in ruins, but he started what is now Windsor Castle, which some of you may have visited or been to. I know the guides there. We're missing going to Windsor, aren't we? This is a little picture of William getting crowned in the Abbey before it all goes nuts. Now, when William dies, he is over in France and he dies and he's buried in a place called Caen, which is in northern France, and he leaves everything he's got to his sons. Now, his oldest son gets France, gets the bits he's got in France, Normandy and all of that lot. His second son, also called William, gets England. William Rufus, as he'll be known, and we might come back to him at some point. Son number 3 gets a big old pile of money, which is possibly better. Who knows? Who can say? And so that's William. So he is still to this day, buried up in northern France. So there we go. That's kind of the story of all of that. A little quick trot through a very bloody history of those two kings and the Battle of Hastings. So what I'm thinking as to whether we carry on with his son next week or whether we skip forward a bit. So I'll maybe put a little poll up on my stories and you can tell me. Let's see if I've got any questions. Anna's asking if there's a Breton top on purpose. Do you know what? I hadn't thought about that. No, it was fresh out the wash, so I wore it. But yeah, I'm kind of getting my Breton bit here. Tapestry is probably French propaganda of its time. Yeah, absolutely, which is why you can't take everything in it as absolute kind of truth. Even the bit about Harold swearing loyalty to William might not be true, but they might have just put it in there to make, to kind of bolster his case and go, yeah, that's what Harold did. I mean, it's quite two-faced, isn't it? But hey, let's see if there's any other questions. No. Yeah, some power walk. Yeah, 200 miles in a week. That is a pretty decent power walk. All right there. No, I don't think there's any other questions. Gosh. There we go. Fab. All right. Well, listen, thank you all for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to be back tomorrow with hopefully my fabulous friend and ex-colleague now, Elizabeth Rizzini, who is a weather girl on the BBC. She's going to come on, talk to us about the BBC, what it's like working there, how she got to be a weather girl. So that should be fun. And then Women's Wednesdays, the day after that, where we're going to be talking about James Barry. So there we've got that to look forward to. Thank you all for coming. Really interesting to see you. Really lovely to see you all. And I will see you again tomorrow at 3. Yay. Bye.